So it's from here I bring out more information. But in order for you to be able to trade the system well, which I'll call the stage 2, you need to be able to, first of all, you need to be able to execute this stage 1 at all time. You need to be able to follow the work process, execute it on each time frames, know how it works on its own before we start the stage 2. But like I said, if you are good in executing, in putting your take profit and trailing your profit or holding it for a long time, then we can start talking about the next stage of the strategy. Okay, I hope you can hear me. So these are just, okay, here's a trading plan. So trades are taken on the 4 hours, daily and weekly time frame. It's just like I'm talking to myself. I can't hear anybody from the background.
You're audible. We can hear you.
Okay. So I'll proceed. So these are the trades are taken on the 4 hours time frame, the 4 hours, the daily, and the weekly time frame. So the trades are taken in the same pattern, the same rules for all time frames, right? So you just need to be able to come on the 4 hours time frame every 4 hours, come on the daily time frame at the end of every day, and come on the weekly time frame at the end of every week. So what it means that in the 4 hours, you expect more setup. In the daily, you expect at least, if you have too many setup, it's like 1 or 2, maximum of 2 in a month on the daily. And weekly, sometimes you have maximum of 1 or 2 in 2 months or 3 months before you get 2 months at least before you get a setup on a weekly. But they are all thought process. They are all in one process to make you know the direction of where the 4 hour trade is going, where you need to be putting your take profit targets, and where you are also when you need to have a buy and a sell in the same pair running at the same time. So this is what the strategy entails in terms of the different time frame. So on the context, we say 4 hours time frame requires you to be on the chart every 4 hours to know when you have a setup or not. This also applies to the daily and weekly time frame, just like I said. To maximize this strategy, I recommend keeping a diary of the pairs, therefore knowing them intimately. In order for you to be able to know where, you need to be able to have the information to know where you are really taking the loss, or what's the recurring pattern that is really hitting you the most, whether in a pair, whether you are buying, you are not going according to what, as in when you are taking those trades, you are taking them within the daily time frame. You are taking them within the daily time frame setup. So you need to be able to have those information by recording your trades on your journal daily as the setup comes in. So when you have this, you'll now be able to know what you're cutting off or what you're putting in through the strategy. Then fractals are required to be on the chart to guide your feed process in getting an entry. So I always put my fractals on the chart because one benefit of having a fractal is that price always rejects on fractals. Price always come back, either it's come to the fractal, reject the fractal, or it close above the fractal, come back for a retest on the fractal line or below the fractal line before going to the intended direction. So I use that as my advantage to know, okay, this is where I want my TP to be. This is the most recent fractal on the weekly or on the daily, so that I could be able to take out my trade or close my trade as early as possible. So having a weekly sell and a 4 hours buy in a pair at the same time is not a deal breaker. So what I mean here is that if you're having a weekly sell, right, and on why the weekly sell is going, you now have a buy, right? It doesn't mean that because weekly is selling, I should not take the buys that are coming on 4 hours, right? So you want to be able to hold the sell and hold the buy so that whichever way the price breakout, either upward or downward, you want to be in the trade when the breakout happens. You want to be in the trade when the breakout happens. So this is what I mean where I wrote that sentence, that line. So the next one is the workability. What I do is I usually set an alarm for the 4 hours chart. I set an alarm, and every 4 hours I'm reminded. So one of the downside of the strategy is that they are 2 o'clock, like 10 o'clock in the evening, 2 o'clock, and 6 o'clock in the early morning. So these are the 3 times you need to be awake, especially the 2 o'clock alarm. So you want to be at least, you spend less than 10 to 15 minutes on the chart. Once you have the 4 hours time, you spend less than 10 to 15 minutes. Unless you have a trade, then you want to actually take those trades. Even when you're executing, you spend less than 10 minutes. So, but you are required to check your chart at that 4 hours. If not, you might miss a setup. And missing a setup is just like probability. You are missing a trade. Once you miss a trade, the win rate is not in your favor. So now this is the bias. We use the H4 value line for the 4 hours. The TDIN, the one we use in our general full string class. So green is for buy, as we all know, red is for sell. The TDIN alert, I use the black and the white. So for a buy setup, value line is green on 4 hours. If I'm trading the 4 hours setup, the close above the lowest bearish candle on a green value line in a black TDIN alert. So a close above the lowest bearish candle on a green value line in a black TDIN alert. So I'll go to the charts. So we can see. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is NZD USD. Now we are working. You can currently see that for a buy setup, like I said, this is the value line. Green means we are buying, right? And these are the black TDIN alerts. These are what I call the TDIN alert. The black, the white. So the black represents when, even in a buy trend, there are sellers, and the white represents in a buy on a sell trend, they are buyers. So what we want to see is that we want to be able to know when the sell pressure is exhausted, so that we can be able to come into the chart and enter into our trade. So if you look at this point, this was our first trade in this buy setup. You look here, you can see that you have a black TDIN alert. What are you waiting for? Now you're looking for the lowest bearish candle and a close above. So this is our first setup. This is our first setup. We took this trade, lowest bearish candle, close above, and this was the retest, right? So once there's a close above, what we do next is so a close above the lowest bearish candle on a green value line in a black TDIN alert. Then once we have this, it means that once we have the first, which is the green buy, the green buy, the black TDIN alert, it means that we are looking for buys. So once we have a close above the lowest bearish candle on a green value line in a black hidden alert, we execute our trade. So buy entry upon a breakout of the lowest bearish candle in a green value line in a black today on H4 time frame. We set our buy limit on the top of a previous fractal or mid-range of the candle. Should be mid-range of the candle. Mid-range of the candle of the lowest bearish candle, mid-range of the lowest bearish candle. So what I advise is that to me, I use fractal to fractal most of the times if it's available, or I use the range of the candle depending on that bearish candle. So, but when you do your back test, you can see how often price go back to the bearish candle. Then you can see, you can be able to say, okay, should I have you can say, should I use the full bearish candle or the middle bearish candle? You know better. But after I've done multiple back tests, some pairs have like reoccurring type numbers of pips on the 4 hours time frame. So once, even if my bearish candle is very small, I just use that average pips, and I just make sure that my entry is around my entry and stop loss. From my entry to stop loss is around that pip. So I can just go from there. So for me to now start looking at, okay, is this at the middle or is it at the top or is it fractal to fractal? I already have that average number I can easily use for the particular pair I'm trading. So let's go to the chart. Then once this has happened, what you do is, this is my fib setting. You take your fib and I'm using bottom to top of this bearish candle, the close of the open of the bearish candle, because the stop loss, the number of pips is little. My average pips for MZD USD is about 30. So when I have that pips number, if I see that the lowest bearish candle, the range of the candle is not big, I just have that average. I just make use of it. Okay, so now if you look at this, immediately the close above, we have a white hidden alert telling us that the back continuation has begun. It retested and it came back, it hit our stop loss, and it took us out of the trade. And after taking us out of the trade, it gave us another setup here. Give us another setup. This was the lowest bearish candle, this was the close above, and this was the retest. And this is where I make use of my fractal to fractal. If you look at by your left, you see this fractal. So I just use it. You see that price close above, came back, retested, and we went up, right? And we went up. So this is how I would have entered into that trade. I actually took that trade and I've closed it for some reasons, which we'll see as we go. So our stop loss range of candle plus ATR, we already have our fib setting. We use mostly on simple pips. So that's what I use, multiple of stop loss. I twin trade my first TP at local high and second TP at the recent global high. But when I mean first TP at local high, it means that when I take this trade, if I go to my daily, right? And let me make sure I have, because I now rely mostly on fractal, on my daily, if this was where I took the trade, my first TP would be here, which is the fractal I can see, the closest fractal I can see, and my second TP will be there. The next fractal I can see, because I mostly use fractal to fractal because I expect price to reject upon the retest of every fractal. So this is what I expect. So if you feed, you could see that my TP1 is around this area and my TP2 is around this area. So let's go to a sell condition. Then this is an example of a trade. This trade was taken on NZD, was taken on AUD USD of recent, was a recent trade I took. AUD USD. So I'll show you how I took this trade and how I put my stop loss. So this was the setup. We had the green value line, the black today, the close above the lowest bearish candle, and see that's a fractal, and that was the retest. So upon the retest, this is how I put my TP. I went to my weekly zone, and let me close this. When I look at my weekly, because I have a red value line here, which means that I'm trading against my weekly, I'm trading against my weekly trend. This is actually for the stage 2. This is how I filter my trades. I'm trading against my weekly trade. What I want to do is that I want to be able to go out of trade as early as possible, because I believe that the market is prone to go towards the direction of the overall trend. So we can sell at any time, market can reverse at any time. So I want to be able to take my profit I want to be able to leave the market as early as possible. So what do I see here? I go to 4 hours, and this was where the trade was taking. This was where the trade was taking. On weekly, you can see it over here. And this is the next fractal, the most recent fractal I can see, right? This is the most recent fractal I can see. What I do is I put my TP0, because I know that fractal attracts price to itself. So my both TPs are here. This is what I can see. On daily, it's what I can see. These are the fractals, the closest fractal I can see. So on H4, when I make that feed on swing trade, I'm putting both TP close above retest and TPR at TP5. So I'm taking both TPs here. No matter what's happening, this is where I'm taking my trade out. And price went there, went up, came back, and does what it does, right? So one important thing, like I said, is that you don't want to be, if you look at this trade happened 12 midnight. This close above happened 12 at 10 o'clock, right? Yeah, 10 o'clock. Close above happened 10 o'clock, right? So if you were not on your chart when this happens, you would have not been able to take this trade. And probably when you wake up this was by 8, depending on when this candle went up, you'd have missed the whole of this trade because you were not there during this period. So it's very good to have that alarm system that just push you to your chart every 4 hours. But sometimes when you have the record of, okay, you already know that there's not a black sedan, or I'm not having a setup on this pair. When we go to stage 2, you can be able to say, okay, this week I'm not seeing any trade on this pair, because the 4 hours and some other time frames are not colliding together. They are not in the same direction. So I don't want to be in the mix. I don't want to be taking sell when the overall trends is telling me to buy. So go back to, so this is it, and you can see how 4 hours entry, this was the entry, this was the profit target, and this was it on a daily view. This was the profit target, and this was it on a weekly, year to fractal. This is how I feed, it's my feed, and this is my TP. 65 as well. Then we have the sell. Value line is red on H4. We close below the highest bullish candle on a red value line in the white to get alert on H4. We set our buy limit on top of the previous fractal or mid-range. Mid-range of the candle. And this is a chart from EG. So if I go to EG, EG is a trade I've been I recently closed this trade over here. So this was EG. This was the first setup I had over here. And you see that price went down, closed below it, and came back and gave us a stop loss. After hitting our stop loss, it created this long bullish candle, came down to this point and closed below it, right? And after closing below it, price gave us this two fractal. So once this fractal exists, I'm putting my limits fractal to fractal. So before I do that, I'll show you where I set my TPs. So let me go vertical one here. On daily, this was it. I wasn't having a clear view from the daily time frame, but from weekly, let me put a and from weekly, this was where the trade was taking, and I can see this fractal over here. So I'm taking the trade from here to here, and this is about 1, 2, 3, about 3 weeks, right? So although I'm not like waiting for it to touch the fractal, so I probably just put it on the close of this candle, just for safety reason, before price reach there and reject. So when I go to my H4, this is it, and fractal to fractal. So I had this entry here for a retest to a sell side at TP5, is what I can see. And I had another entry over here. So I put my setting as well. The sell side, I also have the average of TP, of pips I could reach in this pair, something that has reoccurred from my back test. Then I also had this was another entry. This was another entry, but it came back and hit my stop loss and gave me a retest to this and created another high here, close below a retest, and the breakout happened here. So like I said, sometimes before, when I'm trading this, right, this is a very, what would I call it, a very technical place, because you can look here now, you can see that price is like accumulating, it's like a range, right? Price is neither going up or going down. What I do to be able to be sure that, okay, this price is still in my trend, I just use it's like a trend line. I want to see that the first setup I made, price didn't come and just kiss it, like create a small wick upward. I'll show you what happened on EA. It was EA, yes. I had to close that trade, and I closed it earlier. You can see this was my first setup here on EA. And after I took this trade, price came. It didn't hit my stop loss, but it creates another up here. It creates a wick upward to tell me that it's like, if this was a trend line, if this was a straight trend line, we are creating higher high instead of lower low. You get, this was the first setup. It created this low. Price didn't close below this low, but you can see wick stretching up, telling us that we are about to change trend. So what I do most times is that if I see that my setup keeps creating my TDN alert keeps creating setup in this accumulation zone, but we are not actually progressing. It's not like we are going down, we're just there creating small wick that's coming to look for liquidity or coming to touch my stop loss. I stop opening order and close few orders that I have. I just need 1 or 2 order to run. So if you hit stop loss, I know that I have limit my losses. Either instead of taking all this loss, I've limited it. But when I see that it's doing something like this, it's just going up. It's not like coming up to give me a week above. I know that, okay. And my weekly and daily time frame is still giving me the date that this is the direction we are going to. And definitely, I'll be creating orders as they come, as long as they are not creating higher highs instead of lower lows in the market. So these are how I take the sell, and you can see this is the TP I had to make use of. And I now take this order here. I close this one today because I had another order and it's like price was coming to retest. I just had this order and I opened it there. And GE was kind of back selling today, so wasn't going to risk anything. On stage 2, you see why we used to close trade as early as possible, and why I hold some trade for a long time, and why I close some trade for why I close trade early. So this was the 4 hours view, this was the daily view, and this was the weekly view. Price close below this fractal, telling us that we're selling, give us this entry before coming to this factor. So that's the end of stage 1. I'll only try and let us see daily and weekly setup, because I've been majorly focused on. So just like the I had one setup on NZD-USD, just like the weekly the daily setup, these are also setups that I take. You can see that this is a lowest bearish candle. Price went, create this up and came back. I had an entry here. And price came down, took me out for a stop loss, came back down, close above, revisited this entry and went up, right? So I took the weekly trades over here, and I'm not sure I had daily trades. I took the daily trade here. I had daily trade as well over here and went up. So it's just that the weekly and the daily they are scanty, but like I also say, I go for previous factor, TP1 here, TP2 here. Once price close, I'm off. NZD-USD barely gives me setup on the 4 hours, barely, but in the weekly and the daily gives me the setup. And you can see all this inconsistency in the value line where you're having a buy, price is selling, buy. Yeah, when you go to stage 2, you see how we filter and only take trades that are in line with our buyers. So I'll open the floor for questions now so that we can all talk and criticize the system if we have any suggestion. So any question?
I think most people will still need time to sort of digest what you have just shared. So I might just suggest you introduce the stage 2, so that what will happen is by the time people have had time to watch the video by tomorrow, by the time we are having the session on Thursday, I'm sure they'll be ready with any questions they have. But if anybody has any question, please, you can quickly unmute yourself. We'll try to keep this to 1 hour, 1 hour.
Why I'm still holding back with stage 2 is that for you to be able to be free with the system, you need to be good at holding the trades. You need to be, you need to have that awareness of, okay, this is every 4 hours strategy. You need to be coming to the chat every 4 hours. If I bring in stage 2 now, right, it makes you lazy. You forget that you're trading. You
Let
forget the
them be
whole
lazy.
trading. So
Let them be lazy. Your own, see, your own is just to share it. I think later I will be discussing sometime in the next 3 weeks, we'll be discussing workability. So
yes, sir.
then we'll look at that. So, but for now, what we want to do at each of the strategy sessions is just
Okay.
to see how the strategy works, so
Okay.
that each person, after seeing different strategies, people can then look at themselves, and probably after the workability session, say, okay, these are the things, these are the strategies I think will suit me and all that. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about, just share the
Okay.
strategy.
Yeah. So, okay, sir. Yeah, I will drop the template. So, this, for now, I can say that what I believe is from what Prof just said, is that yes, I will definitely share the stage 2. Why I decided to share stage 1 first was because of the execution, because it took me time to actually get used to what the strategy in itself is, in terms of the routine and the awareness of especially holding trade, because you might be scared. And when you're not used to holding this kind of trade, you barely see trades, and there are losses that comes with it. If you cannot hold a trade for the longer period, right, you'll not be able to get enough of the profit when the losses start coming in, right? And when we start using all the filter that I created to be able to reduce the amount of trades you take within the system, right? If you're not trading as like me, and I'm looking at 16 pairs on different accounts, yeah, there's every tendency that you forget that you're trading. So, like Prof said, be sharing it as well. Okay, can I go over what to look for before I set the limit? So, like I said, let me go over some features. This EU give us, what I look is, first of all, I look at fractal to fractal, 1, and because I already have a, because I took my time in backtesting the 4 hours, as it was before the filters came in, I was able to know the average number of pips, like the pips. Like if you look at this setup now, you can see that the lowest bearish candle is very small, right? There's every tendency that because the pips here for the lowest bearish candle, if I'm using mid or I'm using the full candle, because the tendency of me saying, okay, because the candle is very small, if I just feed half of the candle, I'll be getting high returns. Like if I'm feeding half of this candle now, I might be look at where TP10 is, but there's every tendency that price might not come and retest the mid of this candle. So because it's small and I already have an average of this particular pair, what it is, I just rely on the average since I'm not seeing any fractal close by. So I just use the average. I just use the average of the pips. Probably if it's 30 pips for EU, if it's 20 pips for card share, whatsoever the case is, I just use that average and I take the trade. And what I look most times is fractal to your left. You see, this is the fractal. I look at fractal to my left a lot to be able to see where I need to feed. Fractal to my left, I took this trade and I don't chop stop loss like 2 or 3 today. And fractal to my left. So these are the things I look before setting limits. So any other question?
I'm aware you want to delay maybe the second part, let's say to tomorrow. So I'll suggest people ask questions, or perhaps anybody who feels he understands to some point what Daniel has shared, and try to repeat it. So let's see. What do you think the strategy is all about, and how can you trade it? Anyone can do that.
Well, good evening.
Of course, I'll try to post video today so we can watch before the next class.
Yeah,
Yeah, can we hear me? Good evening.
Yeah, can you
yeah,
hear
we
me?
can hear you.
All right, so okay. Firstly, I want to really appreciate Mr. Daniel. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have some few questions. Yeah, number one is how do you take a trade on daily and weekly, in the sense that let's say H4 is bullish, daily is actually bearish, and then weekly is also bullish. That kind of scenario. So what do you do at that kind of scenario? And then, did you get my question, sir? Mr.
Yeah,
Daniel?
I get your question.
Yeah, so and then secondly, I want to know your the value for this black and white again. Yeah.
Okay. So
And then
okay.
and then I think I could see for the red today and the green today is 24, if I'm right.
Yeah, 24.
Okay, and then another question is your fractals. What's the settings of your fractals?
Okay, so these are the settings for my fractal. I use 244
Thank
as
you.
fractal. So this 4-hour time frame fractal, 240. Then this is the setting of my today alert. Okay, so what it is that sometimes we have conflicting bias on different time frame. Like let me use AU for example. We have 4 hours, you are selling daily, you just start buying on daily, and weekly we are still in the sell, right? So at this time frame, at this stage I'm just looking at, right, is that what's here is that I'm looking at the time frame as they are, right? I'm not adding what daily is talking about, what weekly is talking about, right? The only time I look at what daily and weekly is talking about is when I'm going for my TP levels, right? So like I said about this AUD USD trade, I was looking at this fractal here. Why? Because I expect that price should reject at this point. And secondly, if you look at this, you see that there was a setup, a weekly setup here. You don't hit my stop loss already before, sir. So there's a weekly setup here. You see that this was the highest bullish candle, and this was the close above. So there's a weekly setup here, and price just went up and take out the sell and reverse, does what it does, and that's it. Okay, so this is what I mean by, because of that I'm trading against the trend in the weekly, I just want to be able to take my TP as quick as possible when I'm looking using the 4 hours bias as a yardstick. So there are some times where all time frame most times frame are just in one direction, especially most times is the weekly and the 4 hours. You see the weekly now, 4 hours we are buying and weekly we are buying. So I tend to hold my trade longer for a longer period, right? I still have trade running here on GBP Chef. Just because I recently withdrew from this account, I had to close all my running trade on this account. So you understand? On my FX book, there's still a trade running on GBP card also. Okay, no, this is GBP card.
So wait, Daniel, excuse me, I'm
Yes.
sorry, please go back to the GPP chef. Yeah, okay. The last
Okay.
trade, yeah. The last
Yes.
trade, not okay. This one now. Let's frame your entry again based on the factor. Looking at the
You said?
left. okay, let's frame your entry looking at the fractal from the left
This
side,
will
because
be
you
my
always look at
entry. This will be my entry here. This will be my entry. There's no retest. Price didn't come back. It's GBP
okay,
share
your
if I
entry.
have an entry here. GBP
Okay,
share.
no, wait, excuse.
My entry,
Let me
this is
get
my
something
entry.
straight.
This is my entry here.
Okay, let me get something straight. The
Yeah.
fractal to the left,
Yes.
slightly above, is your
You
entry.
said?
You always look at the fractal to your left.
To the left. Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. Then your entry is
And I
slightly
said,
above the fractal.
yeah, slightly above the factor. And I said because I've done backtest on the 4 hours entry, and I have the average number of pips for some pairs. So when I look at the fractal to the left and see that it's below average, I just use the average on that pair for pips. You understand me? Yeah.
Yeah, quite
But
understandable.
you said, yeah. So, but if something like this, you can see that the lowest bearish candle is kind of still huge compared to the ones we've looked previously. So fractal to the left can come in. You understand? And you see that price didn't come back here. Price just went up. So it's GBP share.
So
I'm having trade.
In the sense that the extra pips that comes into your entry is based on the pair, because the range, the pip range daily on GU cannot be the same pip range on EG, because GU moves with with
That's why.
strength. Okay.
Yes, that's why
quite understandable.
Yeah, that's why you see I said that's why I'm just saying do the stage 1, because when you start doing the stage 1, there are times you will miss entries. Because when I started trading it, I was using 1 hour as my entry. I flipped the lowest bearish candle within this setup as an entry, right? I start miss my stop loss. Price will always come to my stop loss, but when I'm going for a profit, I barely hit. Price barely picked me. So I had to run the multiple backtests on 1 hour and 4 hours and see what's most likely. And I took that average, and that's what I've been using. I've stick to it because price always come to around that peak range to take me.
Okay.
So actually, it's me telling you guys to actually trade it so that you can get the information for yourself by yourself. You can understand the system by yourself and know that, okay, this is what I'm saying, this is what I'm saying. That's the whole idea. So that was the whole idea. So any other question?
Hello, Mr. Daniel.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you so much. Another question I have is, just like there was a particular pair you opened that there was no retest for you. At what point will you? There was no retest on that particular entry.
Yeah.
At what point will you know that, okay, I'm closing this trade right now? I mean, giving up on that particular pair, because you never can tell if there'll be a retest or the trade can eventually come back and pick you. So at what point will you know that, okay, I'm giving up on this particular
yeah, I understand your question. The point I delete an order if price didn't come back to retest, right? The point I delete an order when price didn't come back to retest is at the change of the value line. If you look at this setup here, right? This is a setup, and this is a potential setup. Actually, there's a setup here today. I took this setup. This was the close above, and it hits my stop loss too. So they don't bloody me this morning. Like 3 or 4, 3 setups, 3 stop loss I had today. G-Shape, G-Card, and EURUSD. So if you look at this now, right? This is a setup trying to, it's either it comes down and turn to a red value line, or it just give me an entry and we keep going up, right? So if I have a setup here, right? Because I've traded this system for a long time, I know that once this black value line crosses the green and gain further ground a little bit, there's a change of value line, right? There's a change of value line. So it's either I wait for a change or I wait for another setup to be created above my previous setup, like with a lot of distance, right? Before I delete the previous one. So it's either there's a change of value line, right? Or I wait for another setup to be at least with a good distance above my previous setup before I delete what's left. So I take my time in deleting a setup because there are so many times that news just come on and it go down to your setup, it pick it and it go back up, right? So before the 4 hours time expires, you are thinking that okay, there'll probably be a change of value line because there's already a red dot waiting there. So while you are thinking it, that you now say, okay, let me quickly delete it before it hits my stop loss, right? So sometimes I've deleted entries like that and price just go back, continue with the green and keep going up. So like they say, never trust the candle till it's closed. So that's something that always occur in this kind of market.
All right, thank you, sir. Please, another question.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are some scenario whereby the red, for example, just like what you mentioned now, you know, like there will be the red will have actually the red dot will formed, and then the next candle will form the blue candle, and then in case of there was an old order for you that was peak, just like a news that happened that made the red candle to form, and then instantly there was another candle that just formed, you know, and then turning that candle to blue. I mean, I believe you will have seen such a scenario whereby I might think that the trend has changed to bearish, and then the next candle, the thing just turned to blue and green again, making it to be bullish. And then at that particular point, your order has been picked, but the then has turned. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to illustrate.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. But what you should know is that once the TD turns to red, it doesn't change again. Right? So there are some time whereby like I don't know if I could see a scenario where price just pick you, right? Okay, something like this. It picks you, okay, yeah, it hits stop loss. If it doesn't hit stop loss here, you see that it has already changed to red. You see that this is a setup and price came back, pick this setup, right? This is a red already, right? You can see that you might be in this trade, but as long as it has turned to a red, I'm deleting this order immediately. Immediately it picked me and the red stays. If you can see, this is the red, this is where it formed, and this was the next candle. So after this candle closes, I'm deleting all order below this, apart from all 4 hours order below it. I'm leaving only the daily and weekly. So when the daily also changes its value line, I delete their order. And when the weekly changes the value line, I also delete their orders. And you can see what I meant by the accumulation zone here. You can see that it's just like a trend line. Price is not making much ground, it's coming back up, but it's giving you entry. Because this is your first entry and you see the close below came back and price is not like going up to show you that there's a sign that, okay, we are creating higher highs in week or whatsoever it is, or the case may be. You are more confident in being in this trade and taking as many entries as you see here. But there are sometimes price just keep going down and you just see it. It's like, yeah, you just see it. So any more question? Okay, I see one question on the chat. You say with the white and black again, how do we use that when looking for a setup? So we only use the white and black again when we've already know our bias for the day. So if our bias is green, so we are looking for entries within a buy setup. So what do? We use the black to identify when there's when the selling pressure is exhausted. So wait for a close above the lowest bearish candle. Close above the lowest bearish candle in the black for us to continue buy. So once there's a close above, you do the feed I just said, and you wait for a retest and you keep up buying. Then in the sell, you wait for a white, a close below, you put your sell and you continue. If price retests, continue the selling, or you just go up and give you stop loss. So any more questions?
Okay, Mr. Daniel, my
Okay.
question is, with this strategy, does it have any particular time, any particular session that you can trade it, or you can trade it anytime?
Yeah, it's not limited by session. You trade it at all time. Like I said, 4 hours is every 4 hours. Daily is every day, at the close of every day. Like you can see over GBP share for GBP card, right? We're having a setup here at the close. Okay, GBP card. At the close of this day now, I'm having this is a close below the highest bullish candle here. So I'm having a sell automatically here. So at the close of every day, I look for a sell. I look at my chart if I have a sell or a buy, and at the close of every week, I look at my chart if I have a buy or a sell, as the case may be.
Hello, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, please. I want to ask, how do you manage not breaching prop firm daily drawdown, especially?
Okay. Like I said, I've done back tests, right? I've gathered the numbers of trade I have per month, the average number of trade I have per month, right? So after getting those average number of trade per month, so what I do next is I look at how much can I risk. If you look at my screen now, you can see that each pair is grouped into 4, 4. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, a gap, then the next 4. So I trade 4 in these accounts, 4 in these accounts, 4 in separate account, like 4 accounts. These pairs are for 4 accounts, 4 different accounts, right? So you understand. So what I do is that I know the average number of trade I'm expected to have a month, right? So I divide that average by the number of overall drawdown, which is you have 12%, right? So I divide by 12%. I say, okay, if I'm having, let me say I'm having 20 trades, right? By 20 trades, that's 40 trades. So if I'm having 40 trades in a month, right? So what do I expect to see? I expect to, I need to divide that 40 trades by 12%. So what I did was I kept 2% out of it and I divided it with 10%. So after dividing it, I see that I could only risk as high as 0.25% per trade and 0.5% per setup, right? So, okay, that's the 2% I now reserve was for either errors or basically errors or extra trade I'm not supposed to take. I just mistakenly without looking at the market well. So in case of anything happen, I have that 2% on my back. So I use that 40 trades to know that, okay, what is the average number of losses can I get in a, like the drawdown am I looking at, and also what are the potential returns am I looking at? And I forward test to see how many trades can I have running at the same time. So you understand. So when I started doing that, I was now able to say, okay, this is the way I should group pairs. I didn't put USD pairs together because I might have, like you see now on USD on 4 hours, I'm having like how many trades at once? AUD, say GBP USD, having trade. So if I have all these trades in one account, imagine I'm having all these trades in one account. What it means is that What it means is that if I hit stop loss, right, I'll be having a big drawdown because I'm having all of them in one account. You understand? So I have to be able to scrutinize what I'm doing and see what I should do and what I shouldn't do. So that's the way I was able to allocate the risk and every other stuff. So it's just about gathering data, and sometimes what you backtest might be a little bit slightly different, either above or below your forward test. But you need to be able to have those information with you so that you can, okay, this is what I'm expected to have and this is what I'm not expected to see as well. So like, yeah, the answer, some pro firms do not allow you to hold trades over the weekend. You avoid a trade with MFF because MFF allows weekend trading. And if you look at most pro firms are slightly adjusting to trading, they are now entertaining holding trades overnight and over the weekend as well. And also, they are also entertaining trading during news hours. So more traders, more firms are open to it. So it's just set up by months. So I have an average of at least four setup on a pair, an average of 4-5 setup on a pair. So I group it to 4 pair per account, which is giving me about at least 20 setup, an average of 20 setup per account. So that's the numbers I use to do it. So, and I've not really seen any reason to increase my risk for now, although I'm working on that already because of the upgrade I did to it. And the next question was, what's the setting for the black and white bid? These are the settings for it. Have length 8, deviation 1, money risk 0.0, signal 1, line 1, in bars 10,000, and so on. So these are the settings for the white and black. So any other question?
Let's put a 555 in the chat box as we appreciate Daniel for today. We'll see how him tomorrow. Let's not wear out the teacher.